The private dining room at Lou Bernardine buzzed with animated conversation as my family gathered around the elegantly set table for my 30th birthday celebration. 26 people had assembled. Parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, and their spouses, all dressed in their finest attire for what they considered one of the year's most important family gatherings. The restaurant's soft amber lighting reflected off Waterford crystal glasses filled with Dom Perignon, and the intoxicating aroma of seared scallops and truffle risotto wafted from the kitchen's direction. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," Mom said warmly, raising her champagne flute with a graceful gesture. 30 years old. I still remember bringing you home from the hospital like it was yesterday. I smiled genuinely and lifted my own glass, savoring the moment. Thank you, Mom. Time really does fly when you're surrounded by people you love. My older brother Daniel, 34, adjusted his perfectly tailored Armani tie and flashed his practiced courtroom smile. 30's when real life actually begins, Sophia. Time to get serious about building your future and making some real money. Speaking of making money, my younger sister Emma, 27, added with a musical laugh that carried across the room. When are you finally going to stop playing around with that adorable little nonprofit work and get yourself a real job? You could easily be pulling down 6 figures in corporate environmental law, just like Daniel does in mergers and acquisitions. The table erupted in gentle, familial laughter that felt warm but somehow patronizing. To everyone present, I was Sophia Reed, the idealistic, slightly naive daughter who'd chosen to work at a small environmental nonprofit called Green Harbor Alliance instead of following the well-established family tradition of pursuing high-powered, lucrative careers in business, law, or real estate development. They observed my modest annual salary of $32,000, my simple one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn Heights, and my reliable but unremarkable Honda Civic, and they naturally assumed I was the family's well-meaning but ultimately impractical underachiever. Sophia's doing genuinely important work, Aunt Margaret said diplomatically, always the family peacekeeper. Not everything in this world revolves around making money, you know. That's remarkably easy to say when you already have plenty of it, Uncle Robert chuckled good-naturedly while cutting into his perfectly prepared duck confit. But let's be realistic. Sophia's substantial trust fund will automatically kick in when she turns 35 anyway. She's got a financial safety net that most people would literally kill for. Dad, Richard Reed, deliberately set down his wine glass with the kind of authority that commanded immediate attention from everyone in the room. At 58, he naturally dominated any space he entered. His real estate development company, Reed Properties, had been responsible for constructing nearly half of the luxury condominiums that defined Manhattan's ever-changing skyline, and his commanding presence could fill even the largest boardroom or family gathering. Actually, Robert, your mention of Sophia's trust fund brings up something quite important, Dad said, his voice taking on that unmistakably serious, no-nonsense tone he typically reserved for crucial boardroom negotiations and major business decisions. Something that Patricia and I absolutely need to discuss with Sophia tonight. The table's lively conversation gradually died down to complete silence. Mom looked visibly uncomfortable, fidgeting nervously with her elegant pearl necklace, a telltale sign that she was deeply anxious about whatever was coming next. Richard, perhaps this really isn't the appropriate time or place, she whispered urgently, glancing meaningfully around the table at all the watching faces. No, Patricia. Sophia deserves to know the truth, and frankly, everyone here needs to understand the gravity of our current situation. Dad turned to face me directly, his expression grave and businesslike. Sweetheart, there's absolutely no easy or gentle way to say what I need to tell you. We've been forced to make some extraordinarily difficult financial decisions recently. My stomach tightened involuntarily, but I maintained my calm, neutral expression. Years of family gatherings had taught me the critical importance of controlling my reactions during emotionally charged moments. What specific kind of decisions are we talking about? I asked evenly, keeping my voice steady. Daniel immediately leaned forward, his razor-sharp lawyer instincts fully activated. Dad, what exactly is going on here? You're making this sound quite serious. The Riverside Development Project has encountered some absolutely catastrophic complications, Dad explained heavily, referring to his latest and most ambitious commercial real estate venture. We're facing multiple environmental lawsuits, endless permit delays, massive cost overruns, and supply chain disasters. We're currently looking at a $20 million shortfall minimum. Uncle Robert whistled low and long. $20 million? Richard, that's not just serious. That's potentially company ending. It absolutely is. And unfortunately, We've been forced to liquidate several major family assets to cover the mounting debts and legal fees. Dad's eyes met mine directly across the candlelit table. Sophia, we've had to sell your trust fund to pay our debts. I'm genuinely sorry, but it was literally our only viable option to save everything else. The room fell into such complete silence that I could clearly hear the soft jazz piano playing in the restaurant's main dining room and the distant rhythmic clink of dishes being washed in the kitchen. Emma gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad, you actually sold Sophia's entire inheritance? Her whole financial future. We didn't have any other realistic choice, Mom said quickly, her voice tight with stress. Our lawyers thoroughly reviewed all our options and concluded it was the only way to protect the family's remaining assets from complete destruction. Daniel's normally confident face had gone completely pale. Dad, that trust fund was worth $15 million. That represented Sophia's entire future security, her safety net, her independence. I know exactly what it was worth, Daniel, Dad replied with firm conviction. But it was infinitely better to sacrifice one family member's trust fund than to allow our entire family legacy to crumble into nothing. Sophia's still young and resilient. She can rebuild her life from scratch. The rest of us simply don't have that luxury of time. Aunt Margaret looked absolutely horrified, her elegant composure cracking. Richard, that money came directly from your father's estate when he passed away. It was specifically designated and legally protected for Sophia's future well-being. And now it's protecting our family's present survival, Dad stated with absolute finality. Sophia, I fully realize this is incredibly difficult news to receive on your birthday celebration, but you needed to know the truth. All the legal papers were signed and filed yesterday afternoon. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my champagne, carefully processing the situation while maintaining my composure. Around the table, my family members were staring at me with complex mixtures of genuine sympathy, shock, guilt, and intense curiosity about how I would react to this devastating news. That's quite interesting, Dad, I said calmly, setting down my crystal glass with perfect control. But there's one rather significant problem with your entire plan. What do you mean by that? I reached into my designer purse and pulled out a thick leather portfolio that I'd brought specifically for this moment. You fundamentally cannot sell what you don't actually control. Dad laughed, but the sound came out forced and uncomfortable. Sophia, honey, I genuinely appreciate your optimism and fighting spirit, but the legal documents have already been signed, notarized, and filed. The trust fund is completely gone. Actually, it's not gone at all. I opened the portfolio methodically and removed a comprehensive set of official documents. Because the trust fund you believe you sold yesterday never actually existed in the first place. The confusion spreading across Dad's face was almost comical in its completeness. What are you talking about? That's impossible. I handed him the documents with steady hands. These are the real, authentic trust documents, Dad. The ones that were actually filed with the state of New York when Grandpa died 8 years ago. Daniel, ever the meticulous attorney, immediately reached for the papers with professional intensity. His eyes widened dramatically as he scanned the dense legal text. Dad, these official documents clearly show Sophia as the sole trustee and primary beneficiary. Your name doesn't appear anywhere on these legal filings. That's completely impossible, Dad insisted, grabbing the documents from Daniel's hands. I'm the designated executor of my father's entire estate. I control all the family trusts, investments, and financial accounts. You control most of them, I corrected gently. But definitely not mine. Mom was staring at the papers over Dad's shoulder, her face growing increasingly pale. Richard, she's absolutely right. This shows a completely different legal structure than what we discussed extensively with our lawyers. I pulled out my phone and opened my secure banking application. The trust fund you think you sold yesterday? That was actually a decoy account I created 3 years ago when I first realized you might eventually try something exactly like this. It contained precisely $50,000. Just enough to make the paperwork look completely legitimate to casual observation. A decoy account? Emma asked, completely bewildered by this revelation. I opened it at the same bank with deliberately similar account numbers, and occasionally let you see monthly statements when you visited my apartment. You automatically assumed it was the real trust fund because that's exactly what you expected to see, and I never corrected your assumption. Dad's face was rapidly turning red with a mixture of embarrassment and anger. Sophia, that's fraud. You can't legally create fake financial accounts to deceive your own family. It wasn't fake in any way, Dad. It was a completely real account containing real money that I earned and deposited myself. I just never explicitly told you it wasn't the only account I possessed. I scrolled to another screen on my phone with practiced efficiency. This is the actual trust fund that Grandpa established. I held up the phone so every person at the table could clearly see the balance displayed. $847,326,450. The silence that followed was so profound it felt almost physical. Uncle Robert choked on his wine, coughing violently. Sophia, that display says $847 million. That can't possibly be correct. $847,326,450, to be completely precise. The original $15 million inheritance has been, shall we say, actively and strategically managed over the past 8 years. Daniel was staring at the phone screen like he was witnessing a supernatural phenomenon. Sophia, how is that level of growth even remotely possible? Even the most aggressive investment returns can't realistically turn $15 million into $800 million in just 8 years. You're absolutely correct. They can't when you're simply investing passively. But they definitely can when you're not just investing but actively building and creating value. I put my phone away and pulled out additional documents from my portfolio. I've spent the past 8 years creating something I believe Grandpa would be genuinely proud of. I handed Daniel a corporate filing document. Read Environmental Holdings. I'm the founder, CEO, and sole owner. Emma was reading over Daniel's shoulder, her eyes growing wider with each line. Sophia, this shows you own renewable energy companies across 12 different states. Solar farms, wind installations, geothermal projects, advanced water purification systems, and cutting-edge battery storage facilities. Everything I learned working at that supposedly little nonprofit actually helped me develop a comprehensive understanding of the environmental technology market and its enormous potential. Aunt Margaret was examining another document with intense focus. This shows you own the patents for some kind of revolutionary water filtration system? 17 different patents, actually, plus 12 pending applications. My proprietary technology is currently being used in water treatment facilities across North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. That's where the majority of the $800 million came from, licensing fees and technology sales. Dad was shuffling through papers with visibly shaking hands. Sophia, these documents clearly show you've been systematically building a massive business empire for years. Why didn't you ever tell us what you were doing? Because I wanted to observe and understand who you really were when you believed I had nothing substantial to offer. I wanted to comprehensively understand whether your love and respect were fundamentally conditional on my financial success. Mom set down her champagne glass with a trembling hand. Honey, we've always loved you unconditionally. You've loved your idealized concept of me, Mom. The sweet, environmentally conscious daughter who supposedly cared more about saving polar bears than making money. But when push came to shove, you just definitively proved that you're willing to steal my inheritance to save Dad's failed business ventures without even consulting me. We weren't stealing anything, Dad protested defensively. We genuinely thought we had the complete legal right to take my money without asking my permission, to unilaterally decide my financial future without consulting me. Dad, you just announced to 26 family members that you sold my inheritance to cover your debts. You announced it at my birthday dinner like you were sharing wonderfully good news. Daniel was still meticulously studying the documents. Sophia, according to these detailed filings, you're worth nearly $1 billion. You could have easily bailed out Dad's project without even noticing the financial impact. I absolutely could have. But I wasn't asked to help. Instead, I was simply informed that my money had been taken to fix problems I didn't create, decisions I wasn't involved in, and risks I never agreed to assume. So what happens now? Emma asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. I reached for my purse and pulled out one final official-looking document. Well, Emma, that depends entirely on what Dad wants to happen going forward. What do you mean? I slid the paper across the table directly to Dad. This is a comprehensive purchase agreement for Reed Development Company. I'm offering to buy your entire business for $50 million. More than enough to cover your Riverside debts and provide you with a very comfortable retirement. Dad stared at the document in disbelief. You want to purchase my company? I want to save it from complete destruction. Your environmental lawsuits are happening because you're using outdated construction methods and completely ignoring modern sustainability requirements. I can fix those problems efficiently. And if I don't want to sell to you? I shrugged casually. Then you can handle the Riverside crisis entirely on your own. But you should definitely know that the environmental group suing you? They're using my patented water purification technology to scientifically prove that your construction methods are contaminating the local watershed. Uncle Robert leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting to amazement. Sophia, are you saying you're behind the environmental lawsuits that are currently bankrupting your father? I'm saying that I financially support organizations that protect the environment from harmful development practices. If Dad had consulted me before starting Riverside, I could have helped him design a completely sustainable project that would have avoided all these expensive legal problems. Mom was looking at me like she'd never seen me before in her life. Sophia, I don't understand any of this. If you've been successful all this time, why continue living so modestly? Why work at a nonprofit for $30,000 a year? Because I wanted to learn everything I could, Mom. The nonprofit taught me about environmental law, community organizing, grassroots activism, and policy development. All skills I needed to build my business ethically and sustainably. But the modest apartment in Brooklyn, the used car, the simple lifestyle are perfectly functional for my actual needs. I don't require luxury possessions or status symbols to feel successful or validated. Daniel was frantically adding numbers on his phone calculator. Sophia, if these documents are completely accurate, you're one of the wealthiest people in New York. Why are we just learning about this tonight? Because tonight proved exactly what I suspected it would prove. Which is what, specifically? I stood up from the table and looked around at my family, successful, well-educated people who just revealed their willingness to take my money without permission while simultaneously dismissing my actual accomplishments. That you respect wealth more than character. That you value financial success more than personal integrity. And that you're willing to betray family loyalty when money is involved. The accusation hung in the air like heavy smoke. Several family members looked down at their plates, unable to meet my steady gaze. That's not fair, Dad said quietly, his voice lacking its usual conviction. Isn't it completely fair? Dad, you've been struggling with Riverside for 6 months. In all that time, did you ever once ask for my help? Did you ever consider that your daughter who works in environmental protection might have valuable insights about environmental lawsuits? We thought you were we didn't realize you had serious business experience. You didn't ask. You saw my job title and my lifestyle and made assumptions. Then, when you desperately needed money, you decided to take mine without consultation. Emma was crying softly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sophia, we're so sorry. We didn't know. I know you didn't know about the money, Emma. But you absolutely knew it was morally wrong to sell someone's inheritance without their permission. You all knew that and you went along with it anyway. Uncle Robert cleared his throat uncomfortably. Sophia, what can we do to make this right? I sat back down and reached for the purchase agreement. We can start over. Completely honestly this time. What does that mean practically? It means Dad can sell me his company and I'll transform it into a leader in sustainable development. It means Daniel can join my legal team and learn about environmental law. It means Emma can run my community outreach programs and make a real difference. And if we don't want to work for you? Daniel asked. Then you don't. But you also don't get to pretend that tonight didn't happen. You don't get to act like trying to steal my inheritance was just a misunderstanding. Dad was staring at the purchase agreement with intense focus. $50 million? That's your final offer. It's a completely fair price for a company with $20 million in debt and multiple ongoing lawsuits. But the offer expires at exactly midnight tonight. Why midnight? Because I have a meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with the Riverside investors. They're interested in funding a complete redesign of the project using sustainable construction methods. Mom gasped. You're going to work with them directly? If Dad doesn't want to partner with me, then absolutely yes. I'll help them build something environmentally responsible on that land. With or without redevelopment company's involvement. The table fell silent except for the soft sounds of the restaurant around us. Distant conversations, gentle music, the subtle clink of silverware on china. I could see my family members processing the reality that their supposedly underachieving daughter was actually their most successful member, and that she held their financial future completely in her hands. Sophia, Dad said finally, his voice heavy with emotion, I owe you a profound apology. We all do. We underestimated you, we disrespected you, and we tried to take advantage of you. I accept your apology, Dad. But apologies don't rebuild trust. Actions do. What kind of actions? I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar application. Tomorrow morning 9 a.m. sharp, my office in the Reed Environmental Building. You can see what I've actually built over the past 8 years. Then we can decide whether we're going to work together or separately going forward. The Reed Environmental Building? Emma asked with surprise. The 30-story glass tower on the west side with the vertical gardens and solar panels covering the entire facade. Daniel's mouth fell open. Sophia, you own that building? That's one of the most innovative and talked about commercial structures in the city. I designed it personally. Architecture was my minor in college, remember? You all said it was a complete waste of time. Uncle Robert was shaking his head in pure amazement. Sophia, we've been driving past your building for 3 years. How did we not know it belonged to you? Because you never asked what I was working on. You just assumed my non-profit job was the complete extent of my ambitions. I stood up again and gathered my documents methodically. I'm going home to prepare for tomorrow's meetings. Dad, if you want to sell Reed Development, the signed agreement needs to be delivered to my office by 11 p.m. tonight. And if I sign it? Dad asked. Then we start building something better together. Your experience in construction, my technology and environmental expertise, Daniel's legal skills, Emma's community connections. We could create the most innovative sustainable development company on the entire East Coast. And if I don't sign it? Then Reed Development handles its problems alone, and I work with your former investors to build something completely new. Either way, Riverside gets built correctly this time. I walked around the table kissing family members goodbye as I passed. Thank you all for coming to my birthday dinner. It's been genuinely educational. As I reached the door, Dad called out, Sophia? Yes. The trust fund. The real one. Have you been supporting environmental causes with it? I smiled warmly. Dad, I've been supporting causes that Grandpa believed in passionately. He always said that Reed money should be used to build a better world, not just bigger bank accounts. And tonight I learned that some people are worth investing in and others aren't. Tomorrow we'll find out which category you fall into. The car ride home to Brooklyn gave me ample time to process the evening's dramatic events. My phone buzzed continuously with incoming text messages. Daniel, I've been researching your patents online. Sophia, what you've accomplished is absolutely incredible. I'm genuinely sorry for how we treated you. Emma, I can't stop crying. We've been so blind and so selfish. Please forgive us. Mom, honey, I'm proud of you and ashamed of us. Your father is reconsidering everything. Aunt Margaret, Sophia, I've always known you were special, but tonight proved you're extraordinary. Your grandfather would be so proud. Uncle Robert, I owe you a massive apology. Your environmental work isn't just important, it's revolutionary. I'd be honored to learn from you. At 10:47 p.m. my phone rang. Dad's contact photo filled the screen. Sophia, I've signed the purchase agreement, he said without preamble. My lawyer is delivering it to your building tonight. That's good, Dad. I think we can build something amazing together. I have one question though. What's that? The environmental lawsuits against Riverside. Can you really make them go away? I smiled as I pulled into my apartment building's parking garage. The building I'd purchased and converted to affordable housing for nonprofit workers and environmental activists. Dad, when you own the technology they're using to measure water contamination, and when you have patents for the systems that can fix the problems, making lawsuits go away becomes much easier. You've been playing chess while we've been playing checkers, haven't you? I've been playing the long game, Dad. And tomorrow we start playing it together. That night, I sat in my modest apartment. My deliberately modest apartment that kept me grounded while I built an empire, and planned our family's future. Sustainable development projects that could showcase Dad's construction expertise while protecting the environment. Legal strategies that could utilize Daniel's skills while advancing environmental justice. Community programs that could channel Emma's passion while building public support for green technology. For 8 years, I'd been the family's invisible environmental guardian. Starting tomorrow, I'd be their visible partner, teacher, and collaborator. The family that had tried to steal my inheritance on Sunday would be starting their real inheritance, a legacy of environmental responsibility and sustainable success, on Monday. And for the first time in years, I was excited to see what we could build together. The crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the Grand Meridian Hotel's private dining room, where 200 of the city's most influential people would gather tomorrow for what my family believed would be the social event of the year. I sat at the far end of the mahogany table, quietly observing my family's animated discussions about wedding preparations, catering details, and the guest list that read like a who's who of local politics and business. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had no idea who actually owned every gleaming surface they were so proud to be celebrating in. "Emma, darling," my Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the chatter like a knife wrapped in silk, "you've been so quiet tonight. Surely you're excited about tomorrow? Michael's wedding will be the talk of the city for months." The entire table turned to look at me. 23 family members, all dressed in designer clothes that cost more than most people's monthly salaries, all wearing expressions that ranged from mild curiosity to barely concealed condescension. I was wearing a simple black dress from Target, my hair pulled back in a basic ponytail, my only jewelry a simple watch that looked like it came from a department store clearance rack. To them I was the family disappointment. The 29-year-old who'd never quite figured her life out, who worked at some vague marketing job, and lived in what they dismissively called that tiny apartment downtown. The one who drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic and bought her clothes at discount stores. The one who'd been systematically excluded from wedding